Bathurst and Eglinton for LRT construction.
They had to back off. I've never seen such total agreement against something.
Residents dig in, so now Metrolinx won't dig up their intersection.
I have a gray Buick female holding up my phone in their hand.
They're perched up high and they're right behind you. Toronto police are out making sure distracted drivers pay the price. And he fled civil war and came to Canada as a refugee. Meet one of the newest recruits at Toronto Police. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. Metrolinx is ripping up plans to close the intersection of Bathurst and Eglinton for 7 months. That's after hearing some strong opposition from local residents. The transit agency held a meeting tonight to deliver the news and solicit feedback. As Taylor Simmons tells us, feedback is exactly what it got.
We, as a community, do not trust you.
Even after waving the white flag and dropping plans to close the intersection of Eglinton and Bathurst, Metrolinx faced tough criticism tonight from residents fed up with LRT construction over the last 5 years.
Whose decision is it to not enforce traffic laws?
Because it's jammed with traffic, literally.
When is the 24-hour through the night construction going to end?
Anger boiled over last month when Metrolinx announced it would close Bathurst and Eglinton for 7 months to speed up construction of Forest Hill Station without any consultation or permission from the city. The plan faced fierce opposition at a community meeting in December, bringing many people back out tonight.
This is not a one-year project. Why is there such a poor planning?
This is a community that's really suffered. Ongoing construction for years. It's been really hard on the retailers. It's hard on, those parents that carpool their kids through that intersection every single day.
This is the area of contention. You can see lane restrictions, turn restrictions, and lots of traffic. And Metrolinx says they would have had it cleared up sooner by the summer if they could have closed it. But residents say they'll deal with a later completion date if buses can continue to get through and this doesn't end up in their neighborhoods. Hours before tonight's meeting, Metrolinx pulled the plug on the plan.
Yeah, it was today. It was literally today. We heard very clearly from the community and the local councillors that when we discussed the benefits of the proposed closure with them, that they didn't think that outweighed the impacts to the local community.
We're thrilled. We're excited. We won it.
They screwed this up from step one. They lost the trust of the community. The community understands that the project should be built, but not leaving them as collateral damage, and that's what Metrolinx has been doing.
The plan now to take a slower approach. Construction will be moved around the intersection so it can remain open, with work in the area expected to be done by December. The whole project is slated to be complete in 2021. Taylor Simmons, CBC News, Toronto.
An update tonight from St. Michael's College School. It has reinstated its varsity basketball team. You'll remember the prestigious private school was rocked by allegations of sexual assault by students late last year. 7 students were charged, 37 charges in total. The school previously announced that its basketball team would be canceled for the year, but today said it has completed an internal investigation that cleared the remaining members of that team of any wrongdoing. A police probe also cleared those players. An SIU report into the deadly shooting rampage on the Danforth last July has called the actions of the officers that night commendable. Faisal Hussein killed 2 young women and exchanged gunfire with police, but ultimately investigators say he killed himself. The report says police were on scene within 6 minutes of the first reports of a shooting. Officers approached Faisal Hussein, guns drawn, and he turned to them and fired. The report says officers returned fire before Hussein fled. They later found his lifeless body a few blocks away. The report says he died of self-inflicted gunshot wounds and also cleared any officers of any wrongdoing, saying the shooter decided to kill himself rather than surrender to police. The SIU's director stating, in this case, there is no evidence that the responding officers' actions were anything but commendable in the face of truly perilous circumstances. A pedestrian is dead tonight after being hit by a dump truck near Marley and Lawrence Avenue this afternoon. It happened just after 1 p.m. near Lawrence Heights Plaza. The 40-year-old man was crossing the street when he was hit by a truck coming off the Allen Expressway. The man was taken to hospital where he later died. Now, police initially thought it was a hit and run because the driver failed to remain at the scene, but through witness interviews and security video, they were able to rule that out. The driver is now cooperating with police. No charges have been laid. And don't be surprised if you see a police officer on your bus or streetcar in the next week. It's not to target that guy with his feet on the seats. It's a new tactic police are using to catch distracted drivers. Chris Glover went for a ride along.
The officer's not after anyone on here. He's after people out there.
Right there, buddy.
I have a gray Buick.
So instead of having the phone up to the ear, folks are knowing that the rules are changing, putting it down to their lap, down below.
So why do you use the TTC buses to look into people's cars?
Yeah, so it's just the point of view. It's the angles that we get. So this gets us even higher. And so we love the perspective.
These officers are not alone. There are another 4 police cruisers who are tailing this TTC bus, looking for those who are distracted.
When you're driving a fully marked scout car, it's kind of hard to sneak up on people. But still, when people are so distracted and so into their conversations, they won't even look up. We're not aware of their surroundings.
Right. Have you ever had somebody be like, hang on, I'm just on the, oh shoot, officer here.
Yeah, some people are like, just get mad at me, like I'm honking at them, and they're like, well, you know, they know they're honking at them, but they're not sure who's honking at them until they look up and they're like, oh great, it's an officer.
The reason why I'm stopping you, sir, you're being stopped for being on your cell phone.
You caught a bunch of people today. How satisfying is that for you?
Well, it is. It's just sad to see how many people are not getting the message.
Maybe they'll get the message with steeper fines. Starting this year, a first conviction could cost you $1,000, 3 demerit points, and a 3-day suspension. The second time, double the fine and demerits, and a 7-day suspension. If you do it again, it could cost you $3,000, 6 more demerit points, and a months-long suspension.
Do you take the bus very often?
Every day.
Do you ever find yourself looking out the window and spotting drivers on their phones?
I see it all the time. Even when I'm crossing the light, I almost got hit by a car. They were talking on the phone.
What do you think about the fact that we hear about all these blitzes, all this information, that it's so dangerous to drive distracted on the phone, and yet people continue to do it?
Don't be on your phone. It takes 1 second for an accident to happen, and people die. It's not worth it. The person can wait.
The stats around distracted driving are alarming. A person who is using a phone while driving is about 4 times more likely to get into a collision than a regular driver. And here in Ontario, the most recent stats show that someone is injured in a distracted driving collision every half hour. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette Kennedy's here with a first look at the forecast, and the City of Toronto has issued another cold weather alert for tonight.
Yes, that carries on tonight, and you know we're going to see some really chilly temperatures, so of course it makes sense. I think then they may pull it up as we go a little bit later into Thursday, Friday, and then it's going to come back again because we've got very cold air moving in for the weekend. So we're really getting into wintertime here. In terms of those northwesterly winds, they've been easing up a little bit, so that's nice to see. We're not seeing some of those squalls we had earlier. Still a chance for some flurries tonight, but for the most part it'll be kind of partly cloudy conditions we'll see through the overnight hours. Now, as we go into Thursday, later in the day, there will be a system kind of skirting to the south of us that will bring us a little bit of accumulation as we go into Thursday overnight. I'm going to show you what I am expecting there a little later in the show, and also for the weekend what we have coming. But overnight tonight, -12 to -14 for the overnight lows, feeling like almost -20, and even tomorrow afternoon, -4. That's going to feel like -10. So any of the sunshine we can get in there, any sunny breaks, enjoy those because we've got very cold air in play.
Stay bundled up. Okay, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The head of the union representing workers at the LCBO is calling out the company tonight for not doing enough to stop brazen thefts. The head of OPSU says tens of millions of dollars worth of booze is being stolen right off the shelves, and he says the safety of employees is at risk. Greg Ross has that story.
This is very, very demoralizing, and it's dangerous.
OPSEU President Smokey Thomas says, based on statistics released by the LCBO, the union has determined the LCBO lost around $77 million to theft last year.
They actually report that they lost 1.4% of revenues on $5.5 billion. So one of my researchers did the math, works out to $77 million loss to theft last year. That's a lot of money.
What do you think of that number? Wow, that's a lot. I mean, it's a staggering thing.
Oh, wow. That's something to wrap your head around, I guess. I did not even know that.
The LCBO would not confirm that number, but in a statement, a spokesperson said LCBO losses due to shrinkage and shop theft are below retail industry standard. This tweet went viral this week, which seems to show a man casually walking out of an LCBO with a basket full of pricey scotch. Last month, Toronto police arrested 2 women as part of an investigation into a rash of LCBO thefts. They claim the suspects were walking in, filling up bags with expensive liquor, and then leaving without paying. Thomas says employees are instructed not to attempt to physically stop them.
You know, they'll say, sir, you got to pay for that. Sir, you got to pay for that. But beyond that, they can't intervene, nor should they. Not, no amount of booze or money or in a bank or a corner store, nothing's worth your life.
But the LCBO says they have taken many other measures to prevent theft. They told us, we have increased our investigator expenditures as well as CCTV technology, in-store deterrence, and always collaborate with local police on active investigations.
If that's deterrence, how come they lost $77 million in theft last year?
Thomas says he would rather see the LCBO invest in having more security guards stationed in stores.
Imagine what you could do with $77 million to prevent theft and have some security in the stores. Probably most important of all would keep the staff and the customers safe. I fear somebody's going to get hurt.
Thomas says he's written letters to Premier Doug Ford, Finance Minister Vic Fedeli, as well as the LCBO, asking them to meet face-to-face so they can together work on a solution. But he says so far, none have responded. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, this woman says sexual assault is something that is rarely talked about in the Filipino community, but Rachel Cruz is telling her story, hoping it changes the way her culture approaches the topic. We'll bring you that after the break. Welcome back. York Regional Police are appealing for witnesses and video after a man was shot near the Highway 407 subway station. Police were called just after 11 o'clock last night to a parking lot near Jane and the 401. There, they found the victim, a 21-year-old Toronto man. He had a gunshot wound. He was taken to hospital with serious injuries. Police are looking for any witnesses they haven't yet spoken to and for any video that drivers or businesses in the area may have from that time. Well, a Filipino-Canadian media personality is sharing her Me Too story, hoping it will prompt others in her community to speak out. Rachel Cruz says she was sexually assaulted in a Toronto hotel room in 2017. As Farah Morelli explains, Cruz says it's a topic rarely talked about in her culture and community, and she's trying to change that.
She's a lifestyle host in Toronto's Filipino community, known for her confidence.
Where do you get that creative vision?
But this week, Rachel Cruz showed a different side to the public.
I was sexually assaulted about more than a year and a half ago.
Standing in front of her peers at a meeting of the National Ethnic Press, Cruz showed her vulnerable side. She described how a man she thought she was meeting for business tried to force himself on her.
I felt trapped in that room, even though it was just 40 minutes.
Cruz penned an opinion piece in The Philippine Reporter, a Toronto-based newspaper, detailing the alleged attack. She says the suspect is a member of her community.
What prompted you to write this public post that was shared so widely?
I wanted people to know that this is happening, and if it happened to me, I'm sure it's happened to other women, and maybe it's time that we start discussing it as a community.
Cruz says she waited to speak out until after the matter was dealt with in the courts. The piece generated plenty of response.
It's just the ones that stood out for me were, it's coming from men who was just questioning sort of like what I was doing there, or what was I wearing that time, and why did I go there?
Whenever women or children speak out about experiences of abuse, there is, they often tend to be not believed.
Mythia Square is with Gabriela Ontario, a group that advocates for Filipino women. She describes the Filipino culture as one that's historically rooted in patriarchy.
Well, sexual assault or sexual abuse is something, or violence against women in general, is something that's not really widely discussed in our community.
Filipinas were characterized as soft-spoken, passive women.
Judith Gonzalez advocates for Filipino caregivers and nannies. She says they're even less likely to speak out against sexual violence for fear of losing their jobs.
Because of how the program works. Most of the caregivers doesn't want to ruin their dream to become permanent resident in 2 years.
All three women are now working side by side on a campaign called Filipinas Speak Out. Their goal, to let women in their community know there are supports for them if they want to speak out.
So instead of focus on victim blaming, how about we focus on sort of bringing up women, strong women.
That report by our Farah Morelli. Now, we can tell you Rachel did file a complaint with police. A suspect was arrested and charged with sexual assault, but there was never a conviction. The case instead was settled in a peace bond. Well, here's a live look at downtown Toronto for you. A very cold night in this city, possibly some snow on the way. Colette has a final look at the forecast after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Colette's back with her extended forecast. We know it's going to be cold. We know there is some snow on its way. We just don't know to what degree we'll see some snow.
Yeah, we're going to be really watching, and I have been, these models closely. They're not really in alignment or agreement yet. This is for the storm coming in on the weekend that I'm talking about. I do have more confidence in the amount of snow we're going to be seeing into Thursday night. It'll be a lighter amount. We'll get into that in just a moment. But speaking of snow, the record snow, almost 11 centimeters, and that's holding since 1938, that record. So not particularly the state in history a snowy day. If we look at the outlook, still the chance of seeing some scattered flurries through the overnight as those winds back off. The chance is diminished, but even tomorrow I'll keep that risk in. Then what you're going to see is the cloud cover moving in through the day on Thursday, getting heavier, and some snow starting to push into southwestern Ontario by Thursday night. So it's coming earlier in the day back towards the Windsor area, towards London, and then later as we get into Thursday night, seeing some light snow coming through the area for the GTA. So the potential looks like a dusting to maybe 1 or 2 centimeters from that particular system. I've stopped this Friday morning. Just know that Friday morning's commute could be a little bit of a wet one because of a little bit of light snow coming. Now, we'll look at the 5-day in a moment. We'll talk about Saturday. But overnight tonight, -9 to -11 for the overnight lows for southwestern Ontario. And then into the afternoon, that snow starting to poke its nose in. And that brings the temperature up there towards the freezing mark. So a little bit milder. However, overnight for the GTA, -12, -14 for Markham. Some very cold readings, feeling like -20. And even tomorrow afternoon, those temperatures really struggling here. So even though we have these numbers on the thermometer, it will still feel like about -8 to -10. And the wind's not even as strong as what they were today. All right, the 5-day forecast. So I've told you that Thursday night into Friday, a dusting of light snow. As we get towards Saturday, the timing of the system and the exact track is so important. So we're watching that. Some of the models keep it to the south. That keeps our numbers down in terms of the accumulating snow. Some want to push it a little bit further north, and that will heighten it. So that's why it says 5 to 15 centimeters. The confidence in the amount of snow that we'll see Saturday night into Sunday, that will go up as we get to tomorrow because we're that much closer to it, Mike.
Yeah, put a caution on that as well. We'll have some snow. We just don't know how much yet. Okay, thanks,
Yeah,
Colette.
but we're going to keep tweaking it for you, I promise.
All right, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The Raptors in Boston tonight. Possible preview of the playoffs. Plenty of ups and downs in this game against the Celtics. Boston up 64-53 at the half, but Toronto battles back. Final quarter, you saw Kawhi Leonard fighting off 2 defenders, puts a shot off the glass and scores. Toronto now up by 4 after finishing the play, only to see the Celtics put things away in the 4th, going on a late game run to beat Toronto 117-108. Coming up, he fled Burundi during the Civil War. Soon, he will be the newest member of the Toronto Police Service. Coming up, we'll introduce you to Alain Arakanza and tell you about his journey from refugee to police officer. Imagine going from escaping civil war in Africa to becoming a Toronto police officer. We want to tell you about a young man who came here as a refugee 10 years ago. Now he is taking the hardship from his past and putting it towards serving and protecting the city. Ali Chiasson met him today at the Toronto Police College.
I'm originally from Burundi in East Africa. There was some civil war. We had to flee the country to Nairobi, Kenya. Over there, we went through some rough stuff in Nairobi. I lost my mom in Nairobi as well, and it wasn't easy. We went through some days without eating meals.
So right now on Twitter, everybody is sharing the photo of where they were and who they were 10 years ago versus now. Your story is amazing. It's got to trump everybody else's.
10 years ago, I probably think that I was somewhere maybe washing clothes in a river.
Alain Arakaza came to Canada in 2009.
Coming here as a refugee, I knew that I have some skill sets of going through struggles of life that I could easily translate to this job to help other people.
I interact with Cadet Arakaza every morning. I'm one of the parading sergeants here at the college.
Right, left, right, left.
He stood out from day one. He brings a different perspective. He understands struggle. He understands sacrifice. He understands being in a place where sometimes other law enforcement didn't treat him favorably. Some of his experiences from as a young child and growing up through his adolescence have given him, I guess, a depth in character that we desperately seek.
I am a recruit cadet here at the Toronto Police Service. I just finished.
We were first introduced to the proud cadet in a Twitter video.
There are so many people coming as refugees, and I really came from zero to wearing the police uniform that I am wearing today.
It's been viewed over 40,000 times.
Next thing I know, my phone was ringing all the time. Some of the few comments I was able to see, I saw one individual who asked if I can come and speak to their school.
Oh.
And I saw another person commenting that I came here as a refugee. This is really, you're like a motivation for me. So those comments made me really feel good.
What is it going to feel like when you officially get your badge?
I'm probably going to cry. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time.
I think that whatever division he ends up going to is going to be lucky.
To refugees, I'll probably tell them to be courageous and be strong and know that you coming here as a refugee doesn't mean that you're limited in what you can do.
The 25-year-old gets his badge at the end of the month, and with his mom watching over him, he'll serve, protect, and inspire.
10 years later, I would have never thought I would be sitting in a Toronto police cruiser serving the population of this amazing country that welcomed me.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome to the service. Before we go, want to point out on cue tomorrow, the creator of my favorite TV show, Good Place, Michael Schur, is on. We'll be back tomorrow night at 11. Good night.